What's up, crew? Welcome to Filming in Progress, the show that takes you backstage into the world of local businesses and the people who make them shine. Our guest today is Peter, president of Cappuccino King. For over 50 years, his family has shaped Calgary's coffee culture, importing Italian espresso machines, crafting custom blends, and creating a legacy of quality coffee experiences. Peter, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Where are we?
We're at the Cappuccino King building, our office here in Calgary.
And you were mentioning off camera something interesting, which is that you've been here for a long time and
Yes.
It holds a special place. What is that?
This used to be my home. So when I got out of high school, my parents never wanted me to be able to buy a car. I had to buy a house. And so, any money that I was saving, it had to go towards something that would be long-term opportunity. So as a young person, my parents convinced me, okay, let's do this. So we bought this home. We were renting it out to my wife and I back in the day. And then eventually we moved in once we got married. And then, we've been here ever since.
How did that go from a home to a retail storefront?
So for us, it's always, as my father would always be, was, you're looking for long-term investments and what do you do and what does that look like? And the land had value because back in the day, even though it was a residential property, the land was commercial. And so there was an opportunity to buy property, buy land, and get something that in the future would hold value. So we did. So we bought it. And then eventually in time, the plan was as we grew and as we would get bigger or become better in our business, we would then eventually take that property and convert it and be able to put in a commercial property and a commercial business, right? So that's what we did. So we decided to do that. When the time came in the early 2000s, we decided to, okay, let's make some revisions and let's do some renovations and get it going. And so that's what we did. So we pretty much, we kept the majority of the building in its shape, and it was just more of a planning issue and in a way to do it properly, to capitalize on the maximize of your space. So we started blowing out walls and expanding the building to its front and then creating more space and then just taking out more walls to open it right up, and hence where we are now. Amazing.
And you're still expanding. You're potentially looking at some other opportunities.
Yeah. So again, the long-term picture is the land that I have here. We own the land next to it, and it too is also commercial. So the big picture and the plan is always being able to say, okay, what can we do? We've definitely outgrown the space, and so we might expand to the east another 100 feet. And then we can go up higher as well. We always made provisions to go up higher. So our goal, we have a couple of ideas. I have the ability to do it all commercial because I have the full potential of being full-fledged commercial, but city likes to have a little bit of mixed dwelling between commercial and residential. So that's a plan, that's a project. It's not something that just happens, but we'll see.
Awesome. Give me a bit of a history on Cappuccino King. I know it was started by your father.
Yeah, so my father immigrated from Italy. He came to Canada and immediately was always an entrepreneur from birth. The stories of my father that I've come to know, definitely an entrepreneurial individual, found ways to make money and to do what he had to do. When he came to Canada, one of the things that kind of drove him was there was no establishment available for Italians to gather in the city of Calgary. So he decided to open up a club where, a social club where many Italians can gather, have latte, espresso, cappuccinos, and the families can gather and do things. And so he then opened up this location, which was called Napoli Sports Club. And then eventually in time, there was a demand, hey, where did you get that espresso machine? And so my dad started thinking, okay, here's a new project. Here's something that's interesting. And so eventually in time, he started, importing them from Italy. And that's how it all began. And one restaurant at a time. And you have to think, you go back to the 70s, there wasn't very many people in very Italian restaurants a lot. It was maybe a handful in a couple places. And the home market wasn't there at the same time. It was just commercial, right?
Right, yeah. Awesome. So he had this demand. There was this demand for espresso machines. What do you think? Is there something special about coffee that it seems to be this vessel of bringing people together? And it sounds like your father's story is no different.
It is. It truly is. So coffee is no different than any other product that is gathering people. So for the Italians or for coffee, you would almost want to say it's the first thing that you do. For some people, it is a ritual. You wake up in the morning, the world could be on fire. You're going to the coffee maker and you're going to have your coffee and you're going to take your time and you're going to take the moment to have it. And that starts your day. And then you get into, or you're on your way to work and you stop off at the local coffee shop and you bump into a friend and you have a quick, half-hour discussion. How is life? What's going on? You have your coffee. You then go off and you go to work. So it's that moment. And then you have maybe been part of the day where you need a pick-me-up and I need to get back. I'm kind of feeling sluggish or I'm not at where I want to be. So you have another coffee and you might mingle with some of your workers and have that coffee again. And then, at times you're out for a dinner and you have the greatest meal and you end it off with a great cup of coffee. So it's so part of our life, in everyone's life, regardless of whether you're a coffee lover or not, but you're definitely wanting to have it, right? So it's definitely part of that, bringing people together in various ways. We're celebrating, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So was that the same kind of mentality around coffee when your father started this club?
Yeah, it definitely was, because again, so there's a difference between in Europe, you have a coffee shop. And a coffee shop will consist of a bar that will be allowing you to buy alcoholic beverages. If you wanted to, like an aperitivo or something, you can have a coffee. There's an area where the Italian men, the elders, will play cards. They'll have a social gathering where they're playing their games of cards and they're all betting on a coffee, who's paying for the next round of drinks, who's going to pay for the paninos, things like that, the biscottis. And then you have another area where you have where the wives and the children can gather. And my dad had created this facility where the front part was a gathering space for the wives and the children to have a coffee and have something. The main room was a place where you could play cards and you can, they would smoke and they would have their cards. And then there was a billiard room where people could play, pinball and foosball and all of those kind of things. So it was very much a gathering place for sure. And back in the day, that wasn't allowed, not until the early 70s. There was a bylaw that you weren't allowed to, more than two immigrants couldn't congregate in one room, because it was seen that you were conspiring to do something. So for my father to do that, it was kind of breaking the rules, because a lot of people didn't see that kind of culture and they didn't understand it when they were gathering. What are they doing? Why? They must be gambling and it must be some form of mafia ring, right? Kind of idea. So, but my dad broke the rules and kind of did it. And eventually in time, it worked. And many people now today, there's other locations, and whether it's other ethnic communities that have put together a club that caters to their needs, right? So for my dad, that was part of it. Family and friends to be able to gather, it was kind of cool.
That is really cool, and I think it's cool because that's what coffee has become. It was always that. When people think about coffee, I think it's not about the actual beverage itself. It's about the surrounding. It's about experiencing it with somebody else and having a conversation over it and that sort of thing. So the fact that he found that through that experience is awesome.
Yeah, here's the thing that I think that and many people will definitely relate to, and that is, if you've ever traveled and you go to Europe, it's very common. It's not something that's exciting. It's just an average. But the culture, if you go to a small village and you go to a hamlet and you go to this place and there's going to be one local bar that will be in the middle of a piazza that's probably 1,800 years old. It's old. It's a place, there's coffee being held. Kids are rolling around in rollerblades. They're partying outside. The parents are inside having a coffee or a gelato, and it's a hot summer day. It's that culture that we have. And so now when you bring that into North America, it's just more modernized, right?
Have you found that it translates well? You know, when you go back and you experience these coffee shops, these bars in these traditional places, you know, where this idea was founded, if you will, and then translate it to Canada or North America, do you find it has the same kind of ring to it, or has it changed a little bit?
No, it does not have a ring. So let me give you an example. So I have it. I get this all the time. I get people that just come in from Europe. They just arrived and they come and they have to get their coffee again, and they need to load up, and so they'll come to the store to buy some coffee. Okay, so they come, and then the first thing that they say is, I just had the greatest coffee in the world. The experience was incredible. And I'm looking at them going, no, you didn't. And they're like, no, I did. I had the greatest coffee. And I'm like, you didn't. And they're like, no, I did. And I said, let me tell you, you were probably in Piazza San Marco in Venice, and you had a beautiful table staring at the cathedral. And, waiter with the white, napkin comes, and you've got your Sophia Loren glasses on, and and he asks you if you want an espresso, and you're like, per favore, un espresso. And you're in heaven. And it was probably $40, the most the expensive espresso, and the shittiest tasting coffee, right? But it's the moment. You're in Piazza San Marco, right? So you're in a medieval village, you're in a place that is just crazy, and you're taking in the moment. You get that there, but we have that here too, but it's just more modernized, right? It's not the cathedral. It's not a location that is that old, but the experiences are just the same, right?
When you say modernized, what do you mean?
Well, our locations are not old. I mean, our buildings are young. And so when you go in, it's very, minimalissimo, or it's very modern. You got the benches, you got little coffee tables, the equipment and the location is decked out really well. There's some cafes here in town that are spectacular, right? But they're creating an environment that is catering to their clientele, right? And that's what they're doing.
Right, yeah, awesome. So your dad recognizes this opportunity, and he starts selling espresso machines?
Yeah. So he was selling it to his friends and trying to muscle up some business here and there with a number of people. And the coffee scene wasn't really growing at that point. There were very, very few individuals or companies that were starting to roast coffee. And so Dad was starting that whole trend and building it. And so how Dad started to really push people to understand what it was is that we used to do the Stampede. So that was really a turning point, because we lived in Victoria Park, and the Stampede was right across the street from our home. And so that event was kind of something that my father thought, there's an event there. Why don't we go there? Why don't we try? And so we did. So back in the day, the Big Four building was the casino. And the upper level was the huge casino, and down below was some exhibits that they used to have. And so my dad finally decided that he would try to build this cafe, and he did. He would put a cafe just outside the casino doors where you could sit down, have a smoke, and drink coffee and enjoy it. And it did really, really well, because people were like, oh, what is this? What is this all about? And my dad was very flamboyant. He was very, he was not shy, for sure, to emphasize and promote his business. And so that's where he started. And eventually, every year, ever since then, we would always go down to the Stampede and sell espresso and cappuccino to continue to promote it to people that never had seen it. And that's where, people used to come down in the early 80s, and they would come down and they would literally leave with espresso machines from the show, because we used to bring them down. They used to buy them. They used to bring it down. And so that started this huge trend for years. And we did that for 35 years down at the Stampede. And the only reason why we stopped doing it was no longer a business opportunity. It was more of a marketing plan to promote it, but the business had gotten so to the point where everyone knew what it was about, And if you ever met my father, you'd get somebody that will walk up and say, I want a half-calf decaf latte and no, no chocolate sprinkles on top and no sweetener. And do you have this? And it would just really, my father would look at him like, are you crazy? And he would be like, you're holding cotton candy and you want a sweetener. I don't understand this. So he'd be like, the soup Nazi. Yeah, take your money and go. Here you go. So it became a little bit more difficult that way, and we had to, adapt, and it was just getting harder and harder for the Stampede. It is a money thing for them, and it's very important for them to do that for 10 days. And so, the strategy was our prices needed to be higher. My dad didn't want to do that. And so it just became more and more difficult for us to do business. And we really didn't need to be there anymore. People knew what the product was by then. We're in the, early 2000s. It's not needed anymore. So we were like, okay, it's time. Call it a day. Let's move on and do something different kind of idea.
Awesome. Were you involved in the business at this time? Like, how did you become involved and at what point?
Yeah, so what happened with me was my father started the business, and throughout the years when I was going to high school and going to school, my father was like still running the business, but at night, I'd be helping him out, or we would, be fixing machines. And it started to get to a point where the business was growing. And then there was a certain point in my father's life where he said, okay, listen, it's either you join this business and become a part of it or you don't. Because I didn't want to be a part of the business because there was no paycheck. It was an entrepreneurial thing. And as entrepreneurs, our first train of thought is you pay everything before you pay yourself, right? And so you get into this mentality that you're trying to make the business work. And for my father, it was definitely feeding the family, but it wasn't something that you could run to the bank with. And so I, as a young teenager and, had drive, I needed to work. I needed to collect a paycheck. I have a girlfriend. I want to go out with my friends. I don't want to be asking for money. So you wanted to do that, but you're not getting paid for working at a company that you did the job. And in the Italian mentality, as you live under this roof, you're contributing to the family business as well. So you all contribute doing it. And so for me, eventually in time, it was something I just never learned. I just didn't want to be a part of it. And it was a lot of grunting. It was a lot of hard work in the sense that you're running off doing deliveries and you go and do a repair, for the business. And then you would spend countless nights in the shop working on machines to meet deadlines for customers that your father had promised. And, he's there trying to push you to make sure that you're doing it. So I did worked everything other than my dad's business, to the point where I was doing a little bit of work here and there, but I worked, your high school or junior high, you're working at the gas station, pumping gas. We were petroleum transfer engineers back then, And so we did that. And then I worked the railroad. I had a family member that was in the railroad business, my family's extended family. And I started doing that and working on the railroad at night on the LRT, and did that during high school. And then once the business got to a point where the business was, I'm not involved as much as I was before. And that's when my dad said, look, listen, either come join the business or I'm going to shut it down. So I'm like, okay, let's figure this out. But, that being said, we got to run it like a business. Let's focus on creating structure, And so we did. We started. He was, privy to it for a first little while. He was really kind of, okay, yeah, I'll go with your thoughts, but there was still a lot of pushback on evolving the business to what it is today, for sure.
You mentioned near the beginning of our conversation that your father was very entrepreneurial from the get-go. Did you kind of follow in those footsteps? Did you have these ideas of having your own business at some point, or was that not even an idea? Maybe something that you didn't want until it was kind of
No. I always think of myself, I'm the perfect number two. I'm never the number one. I'll be your best, soldier and your right hand, person to help you get through the bind, and I'll go do the dirty work and get it done, and just, elbows down, ass in the air, head down, and get her done, right? Always been that way. Let's push, let's do what we got to do. Being a leader, I was very athletic, and I was, always very good at those things. So if it was leading, sure, why not? But I just never consider myself being that. But yeah, no, there was no inspire to be entrepreneurial and say, I'm going to go start my own business. It was like, I'll go work for somebody and do well and continue. I just really didn't have a lot of direction back then, you know? And then when I took over the business, then it was like, okay, now we have to really hunker down and figure it out.
Do you feel like that taking over was kind of gave you the push that you might have needed to kind of take that next step in your journey?
Yeah, for sure. I think at that point when your father's giving you a heart-to-heart talk by saying, okay, it's either I shut it down or we do something, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, hold on a second, this is not great, and okay, what can we do? And then at that point, I did do the job, and I was now focused on, okay, let's do this, let's do it right. It did become, a business partnership that my father and I had. And, we made legal documents to make it really solidify it that it is a business, right? And that it's not going to be a mom and pop anymore. And part of me saying that is that when my father started to discuss about, it's time for me to join, there really was a misinterpretation in the industry. And that a lot of people believe that this industry is big, and it's not. It's very, very small catering. It's a micro business. It's very specific, and there's very few people that do what we do. But the businesses that you're dealing with, there has to be this perception. Like you have to be a monster in order for them to be able to say, oh, you can handle our business. And so at the end of the day, you're thinking, okay, we're losing business because the interpretation or our presentation to potential customers is not really there. So that was the key factor, was we're doing what everybody else is doing and then some, but at the same time, our perception is not doing that. And therefore they don't want to do business with us because that retail or that presentation is not what they're looking for. Once we cleaned up that presentation, it totally changed the game now. Now all of a sudden you're making business deals and you're doing things that were reasonably large deals. And now all of a sudden, now it's a totally different business. It just, the perception, the way that things were ran. I think that when we built this store, because this was another deciding factor, was we had space that we were working on, and it was just in the building next to us. And it was a small showroom, and it was kind of, very cluttered. It was very small, and you had all these machines on display, but it really wasn't welcoming, And let me paint a picture, okay? So I want you to visualize this, and I think I always make fun of it because I think a lot of my dad's sales happened because I think people were intimidated by the sale. So you're thinking that you got this, European lad. He's got his Federo on. He's smoking. He's looking at a 5-inch screen TV, watching his TV and his movies and his news, CNN, whatever it would have been on TV. And you walked in and you got this cloud of smoke. You'd walk in and go, hey, I was told that this is the place for a cappuccino machine. And they would walk in and all of a sudden it'd be like, maybe I'll think about it. And my father would be like, 1 second here, let me put my cigarette down. Let me help you. This is the best machine you could ever have. And they would be like, I think either we have two options here. Take a risk and die not buying the machine, or we buy the machine and we've got a good customer, So that was how it kind of worked. And I felt that at times I could see that where people were like, they enjoyed it. It was authentic, right? But it really wasn't appealing. And I think at the end of the day, it was like, okay, that's when the transition happened. If we're going to run this, it has to be run this way. We have to do it this way. And so then hence the construction of our, phase of building the business and what it was. And the moment we did that, now all of a sudden you've created the showroom that you're in now. And all of a sudden now people are, okay, this is a serious business. This is a serious company that we can deal with, and they can handle our business, and away you go, right? So business just started to move forward from there. And same with the trends. More and more people were realizing, hey, there's some, this is something that's growing, and other people were trying to get into the business. So the business was growing overall. People knew what it was. Still needed its place, but it was good.
Yeah. I think recognizing that misperception or that previous kind of maybe stage one, if you will, of the business versus where you wanted to take it is an entrepreneurial tendency, right? Like recognizing the
Sure.
opportunity that this is how we are currently perceived, and this is where we want to go. Did that come naturally to you?
I think so, but I think it was also the reason what was happening too with me as being a young, I was very perceptive, and I think I have to believe that part of a trait that I have is that I can see things and I can interpret them maybe before others do, and not to say I'm a trendsetter or anything like that. I think that I can just see things, and could be my OCD or the way that I do things is I'm always planning far ahead of things that I want to do, and not it's a plan. It's just that if you're going to do something, okay, this is plan A, this is plan B. Well, maybe let's go to C, D, and F, and you keep going down the line, right? Because you always want something, and you need to have a backup kind of idea. And that was just me. That's just okay. What am I going to do if this doesn't work? So that perception was when I would go to do deliveries or I would go and talk to other people and meet other people. It was just, there were times where, they would be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, no, we're a very big company and, I don't know if you can handle our business. And I'm like, excuse me? And you'd be like, okay, I'm interpreting that. And eventually in time, you realize that, yeah, it was the perception. And that you had to perceive that you were this big company or you had to be, that you can handle their business. And so that's where I started to say, okay, if we're going to do it, it has to be this way, right? Same with hiring employees and bringing people in. You can't just have, an employee stand around while you're smoking. They may not like you smoking. So you got to create this environment that can handle employees, right? And that back in the day, it didn't do that. It was not that. No, not even close.
When your dad sat you down to have that conversation that, hey, I'm going to shut this down or you're going to take over or join, sorry. Did you feel pressured? Like it seemed like that was a tough decision for you to make, right?
It truly was, because I was working the railroad, right? I was working the railroad, making a good pay and traveling as, doing work. I was here in town and the pay was good and the benefits. And so it was definitely an eye opener, and I was always very independent. So when the opportunity came, it's like, okay, what do I want to do here? And Dad was very compelling in the saying, okay, understanding working for yourself and working for somebody else are two different things. So, yeah, it was definitely pressuring, and it was definitely something. But with my wife, that conversation was, hey, what do you think? Should we do this? And is this something that you think that we can do? And, and together we made that decision to say, let's do it. And so we did. And so by then, my wife and I had already been together for a while, but we hadn't been married yet. We were dating for quite a long time and living together. So it was definitely something that we moved forward on that and said, okay, let's do it, right?
Awesome. You mentioned at the beginning, so you were essentially business partners with your dad. How is that on a family dynamic when there's business involved with family? What did that look like for you two?
Oh. My story is a little bit different from others, but it was definitely, so when we started to develop the building and the structure and getting the dynamics of what we wanted to do, my father always dabbled in everything. So you have to understand, entrepreneur, he loved to build, he'd love to put things together and be a contractor. And so here's something that'll take back for a second. Dad was an entrepreneur. The Cappuccino business was not a business of, so to speak, his passion. It was there to help him cover up the time that he didn't have, that he needed to, occupy some of his time, but it wasn't his passion. And so he did other things. He would develop, he'd build, he'd open restaurants. He just did everything, right? And so always looking for an opportunity to do business. And so when we started to, okay, let's make this decision and started to build this design, I'm like, okay, we're not doing a half-assed job. Like, we're going to be serious. We're going to get the architects and the designers. We're going to sit down with them. We're going to get some drawings and we're going to do it. And at that point, if you ever know an Italian guy, my father would be like, okay, now he's just looking at dollar signs. Cha-ching, cha-ching. No, we don't need that. Yes, we do need that. So it was really back and forth, and I was quite assertive saying, okay, if you're wanting me to do this, it has to be this way, right? And so it was a lot of battle to and from and give. And if you know any Italian families too, when we fight, when we argue or have discussions, for many people, that is like World War III. How are these people? My wife used to cry all the time. She'd be like, my God, what's going on here? You know, and it's like, bud, we're having a discussion. It's over and done with in 15 minutes. Don't worry, we'll be done.
Passionate, right?
Yeah, getting your point off, right? Yeah. And so when we did this, and then eventually in time, once we completed the project and the project was done and things started to be different, my father really took note to say, you know what? Wow, I didn't think it was going to be like this. He was impressed. Like at the end of the day, he was kind of like, wow, I got this. This is good. This is cool. Because we made sure to cater to him as well. Have his office, little TV in his room, have the ability to have all of his, because he was very political, so he had to have all of his pictures of all of his politician friends and his meetings and all of that, and the Christmas cards, and it was crazy. And so he would sit in the room and he'd have a smoke, and it'd be kind of funny because I'd have some customers walk in and they'd be like, is someone smoking in this area? That would be my dad in his office. Well, he's not allowed to do that. You're more than welcome to go and tell him that. Anytime. You can go and tell him like that. And, you know, and they knew my dad would be like, yeah, no, okay, we'll let him go with that. And so eventually then I would have that argument. Dad, you can't smoke in the office. This is my office. I'll smoke wherever I want. And I'm like, okay, all right, Dad, you can. And then eventually in time, once we started getting this business, more and more employees were coming on board. My dad was diagnosed with dementia. And so I think that's the part where I think family businesses become very challenging. So Dad was going through some turmoil mentally, and we didn't know what it was. And part of it was when my dad's dementia kicked in with his front lobe dementia, he was having hard times with understanding, like comprehension, speech, and there was also another one. It's not coming to me right now, but it was very difficult because at times he wasn't getting the math anymore. You know, this is totally a different business compared to before, working out of a little 700 square foot space, and you're doing that. Now it's a true till staff business, deposits, like you're doing everything that is a business run, but he couldn't comprehend it. And then that's when, there was a lot of battling going back and forth because he would try to put the numbers together, and you would be sitting with your partner as well as your father and trying to go through the numbers, and he's not comprehending them. And you're like, why are you not understanding this? Like, this is how it's going and things are good, So that was the hard part. And then that created a lot of turmoil because eventually in time, when we discovered that the disease was there, then it all put it in perspective of what was happening prior to as partners, and what are we doing? Why are we going crazy? Why is this happening? And so eventually once that happened, then eventually that's how it rolled. But I had been running it already for a long period of time. Dad's role was, the odd time to help some customers and do some things around and be a figure that people can do. But the majority of the part, the lifting and everything else was all done by staff and myself and my wife. And then eventually in time, Dad would travel a little bit more than he always did. So it was all good. Yeah. And it transitioned really nice. And so here we are,
Awesome. Did you mentioned that he wasn't overly passionate about it? It was a means, right? I'm sure he was very business savvy, but maybe just not passionate about coffee. How was that to you? Were you passionate about coffee, or was it something that was maybe learned along the way?
Learned along the way, for sure. I can tell you right now, there's probably people more passionate than I am, for sure, for coffee. I grew up with it, so it's quite funny because a lot of people think that when I have my deck out at home should be the best on the world, right? The latest and greatest in technology and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, no, I do that every day here, and I go home and, I've got an automated system that I just push the button, and I got, I have a Ura, and it's perfect, right? And I just do my job, and it's 13 years old, and it makes me coffee, but I only have it on Sunday, and I don't care. It's a means, a need, not something that I go over crazy with. Throughout the years, I have been passionate because the part that I love about my job, and that's the thing that I've always tried to I emphasize with my kids and anybody in my world that's around me. Stop doing what you don't like. Go do it. I've been adamant to tell my children from the day that they were part of my life. I made it very clear to them, you don't need to follow in my footsteps. You need to follow your footsteps. And if it's singing on the side of the road for $1 and it makes you happy, then so be it. If it makes you happy, you got to do what you love, because then it's not a job anymore. It's a place where you get to go and mingle and socialize and do the things that you like. And now all of a sudden you're productive, you're happy. You're not, bothered by going home, and you might talk a little bit about work. It's not going to be the end of the world, right? But if you hate it, then yeah, it becomes problematic and it's not healthy for you, right? So throughout the years of me being in this business, I've always been personable with my clientele. I'm always trying to find a way. Yes, it's not maybe the right thing to do as big businesses, guys. They don't, you're not the face of the company. You need the company to build on its own. And I believe in that, but I also believe that it also makes it personal when you are the owner and that they know that they can talk to you. And there's times where we're getting calls on a regular basis where, can I speak to Peter? And staff are trying to, filter out who's calling and why, but they still sneak in. No, I know I speak to Peter. Peter's the only person I can speak to. And then you pick up the phone and they're like, hey, Pete, so I need 3 bags of coffee. I need my machine serviced and I need this. And it's like, yeah, we'll get that taken care of for you, right? When you can get someone else to do it. But when they know they have a direct line to the customers, and I've always let my customers know, I'm at the buck stops with me. So if you're disgruntled, if you have a problem, my staff do not make enough money for your wrath. So ask them to speak to me or to call back, and I'll call you back. And that's pretty much how I take it. So for me, it's passionate, yes. Now it's that, and more people that I know, and to see other businesses doing well. So one of the things that I've learned is you meet a lot of people in this industry. And as much as Calgary might be a big city, it's not. It's a small community. And, there's times where I know that we've done things to help other people get their business started and get them off and off to the races. And today they do extremely well. And I'm reminded every once in a while that, they've said to me, if it wasn't for you, I don't think I would have started. And I was very blessed the fact that you helped me out when you could. And I did, and so I look at that as being a payback kind of forward handshake kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, it kind of goes back to multiple things that we've been talking about, which is the idea that coffee is personal. That is a founding value of, or maybe not a founding value, but a new value of what coffee is. And the fact that, you're keeping sales personal, when realistically it would have been the same when somebody walked into your dad's small room filled of smoke, right? It's very personal regardless.
It is, but on the sales side, back in the day, you did sales and you did it because the industry was so small and customers had the ability to handpick who they really wanted to work with. You try to ensure that you could give them everything that they could want and then some, and you did it in a way that sometimes made it vulnerable for you to do it, right? But you did it, and you took a risk, and there were times where you think, oh, and I can tell you stories about the risks that you take, and then all of a sudden you got to go deal with the risk that you took. So you go through that process, but then you learn, and then there's the odd time where you get the great stories of Calgary. I'll give you one. I'm young. We're running our business. We have a client who is, and it gives me that faith in humanity still, and it sticks to this day, and it'll never change. So I have a customer. He's struggling, and he's having a hard time, and everyone around him is all telling me, Peter, he's gonna go broke. He's losing it all. But yet calls still came in, I need service and I need some coffee. And we did what we could, knowing that he was not maybe gonna make it. Writing's on the wall, but I continued. Eventually in time, he did. He went broke, lost his business. I lost money, for sure. And it was like, that's all right. It is what it is. I'm blessed. I have the ability to be, I can manage it. It's not the end of the world. So I moved on. I want to say 3-4 years later, he comes prancing into my showroom. And he comes and he brings me a wad of money. He says, here you go. And I'm like, what's this for? He's like, you're the only person that ever continued to support me, knowing that I was going to go broke, and yet you didn't pull the plug on me. And I was the only way I could keep alive and doing what I could was the fact that you kept feeding me coffee and feeding me support through that time. And yes, I didn't make it. And today, yes, I have the ability to pay you back, but I didn't have to come back. But I wanted to because I knew that you didn't give up on me. And so I wanted to make sure that I paid my debt back to you, and he did. And I was taken back. And from that day forward, you do what you can, right? If you let people know you've got their back and you're going to work with them in any way, that just takes a lot of burden off of other things, right? It allows them to focus on being entrepreneurial, right? Because I have that same problem with my customers, where I know that they're going through some challenges, and all I ask from them is, keep me informed. Let me know what's going on. And I'll do the same with you. If I've got problems and I can't get to you, or I'm going to be honest and forthcoming with you so that there's an understanding. And now all of a sudden you're creating a relationship. And now they're getting it, knowing that, okay, he doesn't see me as a money thing. He sees me as a person and as a business, right? And that's what you got to try to do. That's 101 for me, right?
Do you think being a good person is essential to being successful in business?
Oh, absolutely. You have to. I mean, good call. It works for me that way. Works for me because there are many people in this industry, or in any industry. They're driven by the dollar. And every dollar counts and every situation counts. And therefore, you're not meeting the standards, we bring in somebody next. And you churn and you keep going because it is a business. And so eventually in time, you lose that ability that now it's just the machine, right? And at times, I don't want to run the business like that neither. I do believe that you have to have some compassion. You have to have some understanding. And trying to find that ability to really connect with them is important for sure. That's what brand is, right? That's what people, when they, who was it? Somebody the other day, and I'm horrible when it comes to the internet stuff and the social media stuff. Oh my God, I'm horrible at that. So I always try to find somebody to help me out with that, but someone was saying the other day that our Google reviews are just off the chart. They're great. And that means something to me. And I'm like, okay, is that important to us? He's like, yeah, it's good to have. I'm like, okay, all right. So we're doing good. So according to Google reviews, I'm good. So, not something that I'm used to, but yeah.
Social reputation. I mean, it's just another metric that you are being good to your customers and they want to come back realistically, right? Which obviously attracts new customers. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we do, and I don't want it to be, told or seen or have to, can we market you? Can we tell you? Can we do something for you? And it's like, no, I'm not looking for that. I don't need that. It's not notoriety for us. It's just you as a person will know that I'm doing my best to help. And if we can, great. And at the end of the day, you'll tell somebody for me, and that's it. That's all that matters. And that can spread farther than any magazine or ad or any publicity that you're adding to it. It sometimes goes in one ear and out the other, but when you're asking them not to do anything about it and that you're just doing it for the goodness of your heart or for your brand or for whatever you can do for them, it's a totally different game.
100%. I think that's one of those things that, you know, people can blow it out of proportion when you're just doing something, a kindness, you know, and maybe it doesn't need to be shared. It's not about kind of projecting that on the rest of the world. It's like, let's just enjoy this personal, you know, kind of engagement that we had together.
Yeah, I have a hard time. There's a lot of things that we do into helping our community, as many as we can, and we try. I'm not perfect, and I don't think that we're the United Way in any way, shape, or form, but there's no need for gratitude on our end. We want to stay humble and realize that there's others that need more than what we need, and if we can do it, we'll do it. And yeah, don't worry about, the marketing. Sometimes it's always about having to put lipstick, and maybe it goes back to that day when you have to perceive yourself as being something bigger than you actually are. I'm now going to be more genuine than needing the lipstick. So I don't know, maybe I'm getting old. I don't know. Maybe it's time for me to retire.
Not yet. Going in reverse.
Yeah.
What's been one of the biggest challenges that you've faced since you took over the business?
Transition. That's where I'm at right now. Transition. I think that's the easiest way to say it. And why do I say that? So when I took over my dad's business and started to say, okay, let's make some changes, I spent a majority of my life fixing it up and steering the ship and guiding it so that you're not destroying it or damaging it. You're creating a perception, you're creating the work, and you're doing it. And I don't have a university or business degree. That's zero. Maybe, I've got my grade 12 and that's pretty much it. And so I am driven to be successful. And so hard work has helped me. Perception or the ability to listen and learn and take advice has helped me be more successful in my business. But now that I'm in transition, I know a lot, but I don't. And so moving it to the next level is you need to do it properly. There's tax implications, there's protocols, there's things that you need to do in order to make the next step. When I have two boys that have intentions to be part of the business, one that's been with me now for 6 years, and again, never forced to do it. Both my oldest is a chef by trade, worked in fine dining French, and my youngest was a welding engineer technician who's now decided to go back to university, take a business degree, and specialize in financing. And then I got my oldest that eventually came to help me with a project and never left. And so has been here ever since. So we believe that there's a transition that will come in play. How do we pass the baton? Are we passing the baton? Are we going to clean it up and then sell it? Are we going to be in a position of how do you hand it so that they're not going to be faced with challenges of what I might have made a mistake? So those are the kind of the key factors where I'm at now is what does that look like? And so you have to steer your life in finding that direction, right? They're still young, 28 and 26. They're still young and there's still a lot of learning. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. So transition is definitely the hardest thing that I'm having now. Expansion, right? We want to expand. We want to grow the business for facilities. And that's just because we are at a point in the business where our capacity to do business efficiently, not more money, efficiently. So sometimes it's not always necessary that you have to make more money. It's you can survive on what you're doing, but become more clean, more lean, right? And now things are better in play and you might not need as much. But I know that things that we're doing now are inefficient. There's some things that our growth is there and it's maxed out. Does it mean we can get bigger to do more volume? Maybe, but it's definitely not efficient where we can streamline and be more customer oriented, more serviceability and getting to customers quicker and getting product quicker and more efficient and, less of a carbon footprint too, maybe, It's just doing a number of things right. And so that's where we are for sure. Know that we're not doing things right, and I can just tell. But now that next chapter is, okay, what does that look like? Does it mean now blowing down the building and building something bigger and better? Does it mean you liquidate what you have to get into a building that's already done with the facilities already created? But you have to look at a lot of those decisions. And so hence why I joined Forum, right? Joined EO to find a forum that can help me, battle with this next stage of my career.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned, finding efficiencies in the business, because there's so many, I think lots of businesses and entrepreneurs just are chasing sales, which obviously you have to do. But finding efficiencies can find that cash just as easily, right? Is there an element of legacy with the brand? Like when you think about passing it down to your sons if they're keen, is that a consideration?
It has now. Like this year, we just in 2024, we celebrated our 50th anniversary. So 50 years in business. Dad started it 74. We've been blessed every day. And so, yes, there is somebody like my father to come to Canada and then, immigrate and be successful and then pass it on to me. Yes, there's a legacy. And it's quite funny because when we were having our celebration to celebrate our 50 years, a lot of people were like, that's incredible. And I'm like, no, just another day. I'm not looking at it as being like, it's an achievement or, a milestone. I look at it as being an opportunity that I've been able to keep my job for a long time. So passing it on to the kids, I'm at a point, now that we've passed, now we're going into 51 years. I'm at a point now where I'm like, okay, there's a brand, there's recognition here, and there's an opportunity that has served me well, and my wife and my kids. You don't want to lose that. You don't want to lose the brand, but you also say, okay, it's time to, what's the next phase of a brand? Is it blossom into something different? I don't know. That's the question, right? Legacy for sure, but I don't think of it in that way. I just think after 50 years, you don't want to just say, okay, close the door, see you later. They're definitely not going to happen. I mean, with this about, even if I were to decide to say, okay, call it a day, you can always find a value in a brand and find somebody to buy it. And I think there's definitely opportunities. But for the kids, I'm not going to push that legacy on them. That's their choice. That's something that they have to come to realize themselves. And there will come a point where maybe that conversation will have the same one that my dad did. It's either you jump in and take the reins and take the bull by the horns, or your mom and I are going to clean it up and do something different, right? So maybe that talk to Jesus will come, but it's not now. It's definitely not now.
Yeah, awesome.
And for me, I'm not old. Heaven forbid I'm not old. But now you got, two people that can, and you've heard this before, you've got two people in your business that are, could be your next support to really try some new things, and they've got your back, or they can see different things that I don't, because I can say the same thing with my dad. My dad would be, looking at things going, yeah, no, I don't want to do that, but we have to. Take the risk, but I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? So you have those same conversations. It could be now the same thing where, they know the social media thing, that this is what we need to do. This is how we need to start running the business differently compared to what you ran it. So that could be exciting, right? Or chaos.
Yeah, either or. You won't know until you try. It's probably exactly what your dad was saying, right?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And then when you go back and you look at it and you're going, wow, I can't believe I didn't want to do that. So it could be one of those, right? So yeah, I'm blessed every day with decisions. I get to make choices. We get to make decisions, and the future could be whatever we want it to be, right? That's the joys of being your own boss, right? I don't know if I could ever work in the office ever again. I've always said I'd either be CEO by the end of the day or fired, and I'm more counting on fired by the end of the day, because of the inefficiencies that I would see would drive me nuts.
Yeah. That's so funny. There's a common theme on this show that a lot of guests have talked about, which is this idea that now that you've been an entrepreneur for so long, you're unemployable.
Oh God, no. No, I think we're, you know what, and I'm going to turn it around. I think our experience, the older generation today, is so more valuable than it was yesterday. I think that I could walk in and, be in a position where helping companies do what they need to do, definitely for sure. I think if you were, if you can bring yourself back and being as humble and realizing, okay, yes, CEOs have to be the leaders and they have to do that, but you can also show that, you can share that, right? That's the part that I think I like about EO is you're sharing. It's not about you need to do this and this is how you need to do it. You're sharing your experience of what you've gone through with others. And so sharing your share to them helps them be better, right? So yeah, I think I could be a good, like I told you at the very beginning, I could be a good number two. I could be your best number two forever. And just you want to be, yeah, you be the boss all day. I'll go do what you want me to do. So that's just me though.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that a lot though. That's unique, right? In the sense that, a lot of people feel like they can't take orders if they're the ones giving it, or maybe the roles reversed is a challenging thought. So I love that, both are possible.
Yeah, I definitely do believe that they are possible. They have to be possible. And I think you have to adapt and you have to be open, right?
To be a good leader, you have to be a good follower, right? So
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, love it. Is there anything that you've learned along the way, that you wish you knew when you took over the business?
Yeah, I wish on my educational side, I always thought to myself, going through the years of being in business, I've always thought, I should have gone back to university, or I should have gone to university, or take a business ed, or take a business degree in some form to have better structure, to understand formulas and certain things of how you do it and make your business a little bit more, managed. Because I do know that I'm not managing it as efficient as I possibly could. I know that there's definitely lacks and flaws. But I've learned to be a good listener and ask questions. I've never been embarrassed to ask questions. If you don't understand it, then ask. And someone's going to tell you. And if you feel that you're embarrassed by it because they're going to be like, oh my God, really? You don't know that? And yet you run a business? Oh, that's crazy, right? But there's lots of people that do what we do. We find a way to make it work and find the best solution that we can find for ourselves. Hence why you always know that, you're going to try one and then you're going to try number two and number three, and you keep going down the list, right? So yeah, I wish I would have just had more education, just more of an ability with others. The hard part that I have, and I don't mean this in a bad way, because it was an experience for me and that's it. We'll just put it that way. And that was, my father did not have a business degree. He did not. He was just an entrepreneur from birth, doing certain things in life to wheel and deal and to make it work and to buy and sell. And he was just that guy that had the ability to do it. So there wasn't much that he could give me in financial or understanding of the business structure. It was something that I needed to always ask others, and then hopefully bring some people in that could help me structure it away or get more understanding of it, right? I just didn't get that from my dad. If you could get that from somebody where you're walking into a business where you've got the basics down and you've got the business, aptitude of it, and then you can, care and bring it in, it makes a big difference for sure. But I didn't have that. That would be the only thing I would say.
Yeah, awesome. It's been learned along the way and it's worked for you.
It has. Yeah, it has. I mean, there's definitely been, challenges along the way where you went like, I wish I could have done it that way, and you didn't. There's definitely, for sure, there's many mistakes. in the corporate world that we do and that we did, but it is what it is. And now it's like, okay, we just continue to operate, and it's not hurting us, but it's not the end of the world. But you know that you could have done it differently, right? So yeah, I can. There's the business structure, the share structures, things like that could have been done differently, and on a personal level, in a private way, there was many mistakes that we made that I have always should have punched the lawyer, the accountant, and the insurancer, and the people, all those people. You could have just why did you do this? And now that you understand it today, you go back and they're like, well, we didn't think that. And I'm like, how? How did you not think this? You knew that eventually in time. And that's where now I have my kids today, where I need to think about that. What does that look like? What are the capital gains? What are the consequences of the next generation? And you gotta strategically position it to let it happen properly, so that no one is hurt, no one gets punished, and that you can, save as much as you possibly can without paying the government and creating a problem, right? Or creating conflict, things like that. Yeah.
What does success look like to you?
Balance. Having 2 consecutive days off. That's success. That's what I'm looking for right now. If I can get 2 consecutive days off, that would be golden. But we're not there yet. Prior to the pandemic, that was definitely there. That was definitely the pinnacle. I had the ability to travel. I had all the right people in play. Business was good. And we didn't have to really do very much. My wife and I could do some traveling 3 or 4 times a year, go back to the homeland, do some travel, and nothing crazy in the sense that you're gone for a month. It would be like you'd be gone for 5 days to a week, maybe 10 days at most, and do that a couple of times of the year, knowing that the staff had everything going, and you'd come back in, you'd fix up some things and do some things. That was great. And then when the pandemic came, that just blew everything to hell. And that was, I want to say, is probably my shining moment of my life. COVID did happen, and a lot of people lost their businesses, and I feel bad. And for me to survive that kind of a turmoil as a young entrepreneur, it solidified my ability of my understanding of my business, and it helped me really realize that plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, it worked, really did. And when the pandemic came, we did very, very well with it. We coasted through it. We didn't have to get into anything crazy. We had some great ideas, and some good things came out of it, for sure. But it was a shining moment for me. I don't ever wish that on anybody, but it was definitely an opportunity to work things out. And a lot of people took COVID as a bad thing in a sense for their business. But I always try to find, and I always want to believe, there's always 2 sides to the coin. My kids always bug me, devil's advocate, right, Dad? Mm-hmm. There's always, you got to look at the light. Is the glass half full or half empty? And I always want to believe it's half full. So when COVID happened, I took it as an opportunity to restructure, a good opportunity to be able to find, get the efficiencies that needed to be cleaned up. We did our online, we got a new till system, we had new inventory management, and the only fear that I had were 2 things. And one was, how much product was I going to throw out in the garbage from going bad, right? And 2 was, how much money was I going to lose with businesses that weren't able to pay, or that would close their doors and not pay what they owed from the receivership, the receivables that I had out there. So those were the 2 concerns. So one was, we really invented ourselves. We contacted every customer that we had, and we said that we're open What can I give you for free? So this product is going to go bad, but I'm going to give it to you for free, but on one condition. And they were like, okay, what is it? Tell me, you know? And my condition was, you're not going to sell it. You're going to give it away with something that you do sell. So if you sell muffins, you sell the smoothie as free for the muffin, because I'm giving it to you, pay it forward. Give it to somebody else so that they have the opportunity to promote the business. You're doing well with it. You're getting it for free. And now all of a sudden someone doesn't have the money. All of a sudden now they can be able to afford to get a little bit more with what you gave them during the pandemic. But that's what you need to do for me. You need to give what I'm giving you to for free. And then with the ones that were, with financial issues, we were able to weather the storm because we laid off our staff. And we just, when customers said, hey, I'm working it out and I'm figuring it out, we're like, yeah, no problem. We'll work it out. And when you can, you can. Like we really did. We tried to do what we could to just manage that, right? And we did. And we came out of it better. And I also looked at it, where you get a timeout? The world timeout. Your competitor is a timeout, your timeout, where you get to retool, reorganize your business without losing pace. Because when you're in this business, you're always trying to make sure you're on par with everyone else and you're doing your best. But when you get a timeout and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I get to do this. Wow, that's cool, right? So some people thought it was the end of the world, but for me it was like, okay, we get a timeout, go back to your corner and regroup and get ready for the fight again. So it was good that way. That's how I looked at it.
That's incredible. I think in a time where there was so much uncertainty and people were just unsure of what to do, you were taking opportunity to give, instead of be unsure, and I'm sure that's kind of come back in multitudes of ways since, right?
I think so, but like I said again, it made sense. There were still coffee shops that were still open that did drive-through, or you had minimal people that can come in, and so you're not moving the volume all of a sudden of what you had, and they're struggling just as much as you are. So, okay, am I going to throw it out? No, it doesn't make business sense to throw it out. Then what do we do with it? Well, give it away. Let them have it. I know a couple of my customers where it wasn't a part of their business, but if you gave them something to incentivize, to put on a promotion to get people to buy their product, why not? And there's no harm, no foul, right? So if it works, they continue to use your product. If it doesn't, at least it got them through with making some money to keep their doors open. That's all you could do. Yeah.
What's next for you?
The consecutive days off. I told you that already. That's the goal. The goal for me is, the goal is to continue. I love doing what I do. And I don't think coming to work is a job for me. Coming to work is a place where I get to meet people all the time. The challenge I'm having right now is staff is definitely an issue right now. There's a lot of, uncertainty. And so I got to try to create an environment that you can get the right people in play. There's a lot of people, and that's where we are. We're just trying to get the team. I have a very young team. Like, they're young, and I'm okay with that. And some come with not a lot of experience, but that's okay, because you can train that and you can work that out. I don't need to hire big guns to come in here and clean it all up and say, okay, this is what you need to do, because that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody that you can, a good employee that you can train and allow them the opportunity to grow. And so that's our goal right now. We've got a young team. They still need mentoring. They still need me to be here to help them and also reassure them. I think that's the big thing that knowing that the boss still grabs his tools and jumps in the field with them and goes and helps them out or does a ride along and sees what they're doing, and then focus on the training. So once they're at a point where their maturity level is grown, their skill sets have improved, then at that point, then the sky's the limit, because now you can take a little bit more risk in other things that you want to do. And so that's what I'm trying to do right now, is just build that team back to where I can go back to being where I can be flexible with my time to come in and out of the business and to help them out, and let them do what they do best, right? That's why you hired them. You hire people. For me, I hire people that reflect of who we are. And so they're an extension of what my business is about. And that's what I look for. And you go through that process and it takes time, but once you find it, then it's golden, right? And that's what you want.
Yeah, you want people that you can trust, and you can always train technicals, but you can't train work ethic and being a good person.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. My staff have always been aware that they get to have whatever they want, and that when they come and work for us, and this is not a job. You're coming to join our family, because that's pretty much how I see it. Every young person that's in my business has been with me. My technicians, when we did the first layoff with COVID, they had been with me for a very long, long time. And they didn't come back because they didn't want to come back. They just came back they didn't come back because they wanted a different career. One wanted to go back into, working in the shop when I already had a shop rat. One wanted a different career to just get out of the business and not do it. And the other wanted to get ready to retire. So they had been with me for a very long time. So I still have one that, I keep threatening him. I'm going to tie a chain onto his leg and he won't be able to leave. But I make it very easy for him to be able to come to work whenever he wants. He makes his hours, he decides his hours. It's not by the hour. He gets paid regardless of whether he shows up or he doesn't. But the reality is he's feeling needed. I want him not to believe that he's not capable of doing this. He has so much to offer on a regular basis. And so you want to take those experiences again and share them and mentor the other kids. You might come in twice a week. Well, that's okay. You can yell at them and tell them, do it this way, do that way, and then leave. And then it's not stressful for him, but at the same time, he still has purpose. And that's what you want to give. Everybody needs purpose. Again, being in this industry for such a long time, a lot of the people that have left this business or left my company did not leave it because they weren't happy or they were disgruntled. They left because they reached a point in their career where they could not go any higher. And they were young enough and successful enough knowing that, and felt bad saying this is the best job ever, but I need to grow, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with them knowing that if you're leaving me to grow, and I have certain employees back in the day that came to me that started their own entrepreneurial game. They first started their business. Here, I'll give you an example. Worked in the industry for someone else, saw an opportunity to go work for himself, ran his business for a number of years, and was told that you need to come to see Peter. Go and see Peter, he'll help you out. And I'm always open with my door. You want to learn, you want to be in my industry, come in, I'll open the door for you. I don't fear competition. There's enough room in the sandbox for everybody. And he came to see me, we became good friends. Eventually in time, as the years went by, I finally said, why don't you just come and work for me? Why don't you just run my department? You do this and I'll do other things. And he's like, you know what, that sounds like a great idea. So I bought his company, he came to work for me. Stayed here for a while and stayed here for many years. I was part of his wedding party. It was just great. And the day came where he said, I got to go. And I'm like, okay, where are you going? And he's like, I got the ability to go run a big company and I'm going to go do it. And I thought, okay, that's great. And he felt bad. He's like, I'm leaving you. And I'm like, that's okay. You're leaving to grow. And there's nothing wrong with that. We'll stay friends forever and it's okay. And today, he runs a huge company and has hundreds of employees under his name. And he left me because that's his growth and that was his pattern. That was his journey where he had to go. So I always feel that this door might be just a stepping stone for others for great success. And I'm okay with that. And he always is humbled by saying, I would not be where I was if I didn't work for you. So I'm doing something right there that I feel blessed by for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I think that there's people that hold that too close. You know, it's like, oh no, they're afraid of losing that individual. But the ultimate thing, the kind of full circle conversation, is that if you care about people, then you'll want them to meet their potential. And as you said, be a stepping stone is not an issue. In fact, that's an amazing thing. So, where can we send people to follow along? What's to come?
Oh, yeah, here you go. Back to the social media stuff. Okay, well, hopefully Zuli, our new employee, I'm very excited. She's taken the bull by the horns. She was doing a little bit of videoing tonight, so she'll take it. But we do have our Facebook. We do have our Instagram. We do have our website, which is all cappuccinoking.com or Cappuccino King. That's just us. There's only us. So it'll, yeah.
We'll hold you accountable to getting that up to date.
I'm gonna call him out. So Matt Beatty is the executive director chef. He's one of the big kahunas at the Teatro Group. So they have a number of restaurants, and we had gone out for dinner, him and his wife and my wife, and we had gone out for dinner. And the comment that he made was, Peter, your social media sucks. Your Instagram is horrible. Your last post was so long ago. And I'm like, I get it. But in my defense, I don't get social media because I feel that social media is a place where you're just showing off. And I can't. Yes, you want to inform people. It's another informational tool of, here, look what we've done, look what we're doing, I get it. But it's just, I don't have the ability to do that, because I just feel like it's just, you're showing off and you're trying to show everybody, this is what we do and this is why we're better than you. That's my feeling, but I know that it's part of that. So I have to let somebody else do it, and that's why I don't do it, because I just can't. You know, like my LinkedIn is even just as bad as horrible. I got my picture up there and, you know, people know who I am. Oh, you got 15 people that looked at it. I'm like, okay, great, thanks. Let's move on to the next one, you know? And I never get onto it. It's just, I don't have the time. I'd rather spend time with talking to one-on-one on people, and half the time I get people that walk into the store and I've lost an hour because we're talking about politics and everything else other than me trying to be doing my job. So
fair enough. Well, the website's where we'll send people then.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, social doesn't have to be a place of boasting, if you will. It can be a place of storytelling. And I think that most people are landing on these pages to understand or to learn something, maybe rather than to think that they're being pushed a product or a tale that maybe they aren't keen on. So
yeah. I think you're right. And like I said, again, it now that we have Zuli now, and she'll take a little bit of care of that. And the younger generation, I mean, they're young and they get it. And you give them something, just take it. Just do what you have to do. Just do it. Here's the passwords, get in there and do it. And I think that if you can share the stories and share the experiences and do it in the right way, I think you're right. I think you'll definitely resonate to a lot of people. But we old schoolers, we hand to mouth talking, let other people discuss it and let them do it. And everybody's got a different story too, right? So
100%. Awesome. Well, Peter, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And this is a great conversation. I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.